video.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll pop my video on as well. So welcome to the third tutorial, and today we're looking at the vocational strategies. So with some of the discussion links that have been going on lately, there's been quite a bit of discussion within the about the topic, what is good teaching. And the feedback that has been coming through is that people are looking into, past learning or teaching experiences, and some have actually gone right back to high school, and thinking about what was an example of a good teacher back in high school, and then also looking at present learning and teaching, and really thinking about how some of those previous experiences might be applied or mapped into your current teaching. Paul made a really good comment, and said that, really interesting comment, and said that at times he feels challenged to teach through a variety of methods. And we did sort of touch on universal design. I was kind of thinking about different ways that we could teach the same information to people, but sort of thinking about vocational strategies and vocational teaching, we actually need a little bit more in our toolkit than even the universal design, and it's actually having a wide range of strategies in our toolkit compared to some of the maybe some other learning environments, thinking about university, etc. They might have 500 learners that they are taking through subject matter, and so they probably the best way and the only way to do that is by a PowerPoint and a lecture. So with some of our learners, it's may be different, actually having that concentration for an hour. We have to shake it up a little bit. So thinking about that, what makes, what are the characteristics, what are your thoughts on the characteristics of vocational teaching? What makes vocational teaching different from other environments? Any thoughts?
Just when you're saying vocational teaching, you mean teaching someone something that's going to lead to employment? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
So whereas university, is kind of teaching a knowledge that will eventually lead to employment, but what's our point of difference here at the Polytech is that, we are creating these work-ready graduates so they can, come out of the stonemasonry course and be able to contribute to a stonemason industry.
Or we've got to be talking to employers and seeing what employers are looking for in employees, and aiming towards that as an end.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely, and it's having that collaboration with industry and with employees, isn't it? That we need to keep abreast of current trends.
We need to be anticipating current trends more even.
Yeah, good.
Anticipating trends. Yes.
Hi, Ian.
The actual, like you say, discussion with the industry, and we certainly do that a lot with the early childhood centres, and asking them, with the certificate, diploma and degree, what are the characteristics of people they want to have in their centres? What do they need?
Great, absolutely. I mean, we need to. It's almost, we have a program document from NZQA, and it tells us what the graduate profile outcomes, and there needs to be also a fit with, what are industry requirements, what do they need? Great, thanks, Jo. Anybody else got anything to share? I see you've come in there, Ian. How are you?
Ian's just struggling with his sound and mic at the moment, so
right.
I'm just working with him to try and get that resolved.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That's okay. We're just in chat.
Perfect. Another thing, we do talk a lot about, especially here from the Polytech, is that we need student-centred. So, what does student-centred mean in a vocational teaching context? What does that look like?
I think you've got to look at what they need, and you've got to provide a variety of different ways of doing it, but it's got to lead towards what they can do at work.
Yeah.
You've got to tell them that very strongly. These are the skills that you will need, and everything needs to be about what they do when they go to work. They don't want a whole pile of theory sitting on its own. It's got to be linked and balanced with practical.
Yeah. So it's got to be authentic, doesn't it? I mean, they're not going to embrace it unless you've already got that authentic aspect to it.
No.
Lovely. And so I like another thing that you said as well, that there's got to be a real variety of strategies and teaching activities.
Yes.
Lovely.
Don't actually, you're teaching exactly the same thing. It's got to come in lots of different ways, and they've got to have a chance to do something very practical with the information they're getting. Otherwise, 10 minutes later, they're asleep.
And that's it. And kind of what is our, it's been said, 20 minutes is as much as our concentration, and then we're off doing other things. And sometimes if we've got, learners that are on a lower level course, they may need more stimulation, more activities, a lot more, a much greater variety of pedagogy within that classroom, so that the actual classroom environment is moving fairly rapidly, fairly quickly. And what are some of these sort of strategies that you're using within your class environment at the moment? What are you kind of putting together?
Project-based learning.
Yeah.
I'm doing a bit of, so I've got the kids designing and building stuff, researching and building.
Great. So how's that? So how do you work that, Steve? Do you give them a loose project to work on, and then they've got to create that, or how does it?
I find that's been working a little bit better, giving them a sort of framework to work in, because if you say, you can come up with any sort of idea, they're paralysed by indecision, and if you do get an idea, they'll all go with that same idea. Or if you give them 2 or 3 choices or ideas they can work around, then they'll pick those up and go with them and go who knows where from there. But we tried last year with just whatever you want, and we got a whole bunch of half-assed stuff that was undoable, and they had real trouble getting completed. Didn't get completed, a lot of it. So
yeah, and possibly from what you're saying, was last year more of a inquiry-based learning in a way? Were they coming up with what their project was, whereas this year you're actually giving them a project and keeping it just a little bit more, the boundaries a little bit more controlled?
I came in sort of halfway through last year, and it was all sort of in place, and I wasn't really sure exactly where everything was going. But yeah, I looked at how it worked last year. I thought, look, we can improve that for this year by giving them some guidelines and some parameters. So here's some ideas. You don't have to stick with these. You can come up with your own ideas, but these are things I think we could make work. Would you like to try? And that seems to be early days. But
so within the project base, what's your role?
I'm there to help.
Yeah.
I think. That's it, and we were doing something today and it wasn't working. I said, look, I did that wrong. One of the kids said, I think I can do that. Great, you show me.
Brilliant. So it's really the role of a facilitator, isn't it? Rather, he's not a teacher. You're kind of that, you're that guide on the side. You're really facilitating through the process.
Oh, exactly. You can stand back and if you can stand back and watch something go wrong, you know it's going to go wrong. But if you can stand back and watch it go wrong and stop it turning into a disaster, everybody learns way more from watching things go wrong than they do from me stepping in and going, no, don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it goes wrong and I'm standing back laughing with the rest of them going, well, look at that. How are we going to fix that? Has anyone got an idea?
And
There we
that's
go.
fantastic because, you know, when in that sort of scenario, you're problem solving, you're reflecting, you know, and then, you know, you're creating solutions from it. So it's huge. It's a huge amount of learning. And that's also building the soft skills of our learners, as well as them thinking, right, you know, this is automotive. I need to fix this problem. But, you know, doing that problem solving, that negotiation, that talking, discussing, maybe somebody takes a lead, you know, you're getting all those soft skills building within there as well, which is a huge bonus.
You never fix anything without breaking it worse first.
Yeah.
Look at any argument you ever had. It had to get to the stage where you were just absolutely reduced to wordless before you could rebuild and start seeing each other's side of the argument. Well, fixing things is just the same. You've got to break it down completely. Go, oh dear.
Yeah.
And then you can fix it, perhaps.
It's massive learning, isn't it? And I think, you know, just talking about that, I think you've really, you know, you and Joe have both really hit the nail on the head in that, you know, it's facilitating. You wouldn't get those opportunities to the extent that you're providing for your learners in a different learning environment, in a university learning environment, for example. You don't get that being able to actually pull apart, make mistakes, put back together, that time to think and work in groups, and you know, so that's really, you know, vocational learning is hugely different in that context. And I like, you know, thanks for sharing that example. There is another really awesome example. Actually, it does come through from Central as well, Steve, so you'll know it incredibly well. And it's the boys that are working on the culinary design. I think that's the name of the course. And in their capstone at the very end of the program, they took a group of learners out into Doubtful Sound. And what the idea was, they also had Fleur, who runs a couple of restaurants in Oamaru, and guests on this boat as well. And I think they spent about a week in there, and they had to catch their own food and create the menu and cook the food for the guests. So, you know, that kind of environment and that ability is the perfect example, you know, of your vocational teaching strategies, and that you're encompassing all aspects. You know, they're applying their knowledge, they're showing that they have brought all their knowledge together at the end. They're collecting, writing, creating, serving. So, you know, it's been recently written about in Cuisine magazine, in the latest Cuisine magazine, you know, how well this environment, this learning environment went. So has anybody got another example that they can share of, you know, Steve has. Joe, have you got something that, you know, you really found a fantastic teaching or learning example of vocational strategies, vocational learning?
Well, the degree papers that I work on, they are balanced very strongly between 2 days in the classroom and 2 days out in early childhood centres, and that goes on the whole year. So they're learning particular things in class, and then they go and focus on doing that in the centre with children. So it's a balanced of the theory in the classroom and the discussion, but then actually taking it out and doing it in the centres. And we have practicum visits where we go and what you call a capstone.
Yeah.
Summative assessment where they are assessed against certain criteria for that particular set of skills.
Right.
Those are going on all the time. So it's very much a balance between the two of practical and theory.
And that sounds fantastic. What a great opportunity. You know, they get to learn about it and then go out and directly apply it for the next couple of days.
Their colleagues, probably experienced people in the centres doing it, and they give them feedback as well as the lecturers going in to visit with them.
Yeah, yeah. So they're doubling up on that. So it really is. You know, when you start pulling it apart and thinking about that, you know, the concept of vocational teaching, it's an incredibly privileged environment to be in.
Absolutely, very exciting because it's fast moving.
Yeah, it is fast moving, and then you've also got that opportunity to reflect immediately, and think, okay, you know, what went well, what didn't go so well, what can we do from here, and what would I do next time?
Yes, absolutely, and do it next time.
Yeah.
There's a lot more freedom to do that, to actually try things out and to be innovative than there is in a university environment.
Yeah, yeah. So no, I think, you know, we're incredibly lucky. I don't know how Wendy, how are we going with Ian? Is he having
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say welcome, Ian, who can now hear us.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
No, glad we've got you on, Ian. It's annoying, isn't it, when those things sort of slow you down?
Yeah, it sure is.
Ian, I'll introduce you. We've got Joe from Auckland.
Hi, Ian.
It's on here.
Hello.
And Steve Eakin, who's from our Central Otago campus.
Hey, Ian.
Hi.
So,
Emma.
oh, is Emma here?
Yeah,
Sorry,
Emma's
Emma.
here.
I haven't scrolled my button down enough. How are you, Emma?
Good, thank you.
That's good. So what we've been talking about is, you know, what are the difference? What does it mean, vocational learning? You know, what's the difference to vocational learning, or from vocational learning to learning in a different environment? And we've just been sharing some experiences and some stories, you know, about the varying pedagogies that people may use within their teaching, and, you know, what's our point of difference. Emma and Ian, have you got, you know, anything to suggest or to share, you know, as to how your teaching strategies, or some you've been involved in yourself, how they've been sort of matched to the learners and to content, and also to industry?
I was just reflecting whilst Joe was talking that we have a similar system in our program. So we're the occupational therapy program, and I'm part of the campus up at Hamilton. And whereas Joe was describing having both lectures and placement time within the same week, we're structured a little differently in that we have time that students are in class and doing papers, and then separate to that we have other weeks or other months where they're away on placement. So they'll be purely focused on placement for either 4 or 8 weeks, depending on what stage they're at. And I think there are we do one placement that's more similar to what Joe described, and I think that's a great opportunity for translating that knowledge that they're getting along the way into practice, and then having regular opportunities to reflect on that as well. Because after they've been on placement, they come in for group supervision and talk about how they've applied their theory and their knowledge in practice that day.
Ah, fantastic.
And so that's a really exciting placement. The other placements are exciting as well, but the students kind of disappear for 8 weeks and we don't see them till they get back, unless they're having problems. So, but they come back with, you know, exciting ideas that they then use to complete assessments and to provide case studies for their classwork as well.
So that's true, isn't it? And that's the trick. You get that buy-in.
Yeah.
Immediately.
That's something to hang it on.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Thank you.
And I suppose so everyone kind of knows the context I'm coming from, I'm teaching kind of small blocks of time with students in the art school and in the film and television course, and my background is filmmaking, and so I guess talking about the way I've taught in art and the way that we're moving, it's a really interesting year because it's a redevelopment year, and so we're getting to try a whole bunch of new things. And so the way each week is going to run is there's going to be kind of the first 3 days are going to be workshops.
Mm-hmm.
So we're usually going to be introducing the week and talking about the kind of, I guess it's going to be focused around skills, hands-on skills that to do with making videos and things that people need to practice and learn and kind of absorb through playing with those kind of ideas. And so the first 3 days are kind of setting up workshops where every person will be encouraged in groups of 2, I think will be the default, to use the equipment to make something that is building towards a project that is assessed. And so basically we're breaking down these kind of assessments into what are the pieces the students need to, the learners need to have to be able to make this kind of assessment, because all of our assessments are kind of a handed-in video that they have made.
Right.
And so it's breaking those down and then making them into kind of workshop chunks. And then at the end of each week, it's going to be a kind of a reflection day where it's going to be show what we've been working on. Let's talk about what's working, what isn't, and let's also kind of do some bigger picture stuff around some of the more, I suppose, some of the things that we need to be learning about in different ways. Like, I suppose I'm thinking about safe operations and health and safety kind of stuff around film industry and kind of things of that nature, history and stuff like that.
Right. And okay, so it'll all be embedded in rather than actually just having, right, this is your history course. It'll be embedded all the way through. That's a great idea. And I can see that format that you're discussing and working really well, being really applicable and actually also linking directly to the assessments.
Yeah, it's a really exciting kind of thing to be experimenting this year and moving towards it. Something that I have been doing at art school with the kind of, I guess I have 1 week long rotations.
Right.
Just with groups of students, which is really short and it's kind of quite challenging in that way. But also it's nice to be moving this kind of week by week model into a new kind of context with more time with the students.
Great. Give them time to cement it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Are you, just a quick question, are you learning outcome or unit standards based with your assessments?
So we are. I'm not actually sure, to be honest.
Okay.
Because to be honest, I'm in the privileged position of not really needing to worry about the kind of the back end of the everything. I'm just focused on interacting with our students and kind of getting, I suppose, getting them really engaged in the module that I'm in to teach.
Okay.
I will note that down to find out. It's a bit embarrassing.
No, not at all.
You'll be more the tech expert, Ian. That's why you couldn't get the Skype to work.
Yeah, I know. That's embarrassing too. I've got too many audio devices plugged into my computer.
Nice one, Steve. You're keeping us on our toes. Hi, Wei. How are you? She's still there?
Yeah, it looks like Way's there, but her mic is actually greyed out, so I don't think it's working.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I saw that too. I thought that looks unusual. Okay.
I hope she can hear us. Way, if you can hear us, could you just type something in the chat box there, please, just so we know that you can hear. Thank you.
Wonderful. So thank you for sharing, and it's fantastic to hear, what's going on out there, and how we are facilitating those, learning environments and engaging our learners, and using, a wide range of pedagogies. So kind of thinking, what does that mean? What does it mean for us? What does, as teachers, sort of what's the outcome of all this? And pretty much, one of the answers is that we are dual professionals. Has everyone heard of that concept?
I
No.
haven't.
So a dual professional kind of means that, we're all sitting on a fence and we've got a leg on both sides. So, we are teachers, and at the same time we are experts in another discipline or, another industry. So, what does, so it's a pretty big call, and I remember when I first started teaching, come out of industry, and I first started teaching at a polytech that no longer exists, but there was one of the women that were working there was doing a study, her PhD, and it was pretty much on that question of at what point do we think of ourselves as teachers, and kind of how long, have we been teaching for 5 years, but do we still see ourselves as industry experts? At what point do we see ourselves as teachers? So, I mean, that's not something that I'm going to ask right now, but it's just kind of thinking about it, is that we've got this pretty, privileged position of actually, and a very busy position of being these dual professionals. So, what is our role in that? Before you answer, I'm just going to sort of create an interactive board for this. But as I get this set up, thinking about what is our role in being a dual professional? What are we to do? How do we go back to that fence analogy, how do we keep a leg in both sides? I'm going to share my screen and just show you something that I've actually set up, and we'll flick to in some sort of way each week that we do these online tutorials. So bear with me, as it always takes me a moment. It's going to take you over to monitor 2. So I'm working on can you all see the monitor? It should have Fundamentals of TT&L 2018.
Yep, it's just loading. Yep, it's there now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so this is a Google site, and was one of the listed options that Wendy put up for creating your e-portfolio. I actually really like it to use because it can look really, really smart. It's not a whole pile of information that's in your face. It can have pages and pages and behind. So we'll use this format for a lot of the tutorials. So what we'll do is we'll click on our tutorial for today, and it will bring up our learning objectives. We're discussing the diversity, complexity and scope of a vocational teacher's role, and outline the characteristics of an effective vocational teacher. So we have done our discussion about some of the characteristics of vocational teaching and what it looked like, who was involved, what are the pedagogies. Pretty much, we're facilitating learning. What I have embedded here over to the right is a Padlet, and I'm going to put this up onto a big screen. So, who's used a Padlet before? Has anyone used a Padlet before?
Yes, I have.
Fantastic.
Not me.
They're good because you can actually get everybody brainstorming, even though we're all over the country at the moment. So what I would ask you to do is to add your thoughts to the Padlet, and you do that by clicking, and then I can write something. It might mean, what does it mean for me to be a dual practitioner? It might mean that I have to maintain industry spelling under pressure, industry knowledge.
Can I just jump in, Trish?
Yeah.
I think you might all have to request control to be able to do that.
It should. Ah, really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's okay.
I opened it up, so it should, I would have imagined. Does it pop? Does it just actually pop up? Does it, Wendy? To say request. So Wendy, you've got it. Emma's got it. All right. So you can click anywhere in there. What does a dual professional look like? What are your responsibilities of being both a teacher and an expert in your field? Is it working for you, Joe?
No.
Padlet's disappeared.
Padlet's disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lost it too, I'm afraid.
I love technology. Present desktop. Let's give it another go. Yeah.
Could we maybe we could just pop it into the chat box at the side if we can't get it to work?
Yeah. Has it popped up
back.
again?
Yeah,
Certainly has.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to it as well now.
All right. Anybody got anything they want to add to it?
Well, you got it right there with maintain industry knowledge, staying current with your industry.
Yeah.
And that could be reading, you're staying up with the reading journals and stuff we were talking about last week, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you able to type that in, Steve?
No, good question.
So just click straight onto the pencils.
Ah.
Yeah, I can't get it to work, but we've got Emma and Ian typing in the side box.
Thing.
Yeah, in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not able to write in your Padlet, unfortunately.
No.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it doesn't seem to me
It does.
clicking there either.
No.
Okay. No, I don't know what's happened with that. Alrighty. We'll go back to our
Our chat box.
our chat box. I'll work on that. It's always a way, isn't it? I had someone test it today.
And it was fine, yeah.
It's fine.
It's typical.
It is typical.
Technology.
Yeah, I know. All good planning. Emma, great. Translating theory into practice and back again. Brilliant. And simplifying sometimes dense industry concepts and practices. I think that's hugely important.
Mm.
Managing multiple relationships. Ah, what do you mean by that, Emma? Being a colleague with industry partners. Sorry.
It's tight. With that, I meant that the multiple relationships that we have to manage with our foot into both camps is that we have to connect with the therapists and the clinicians who are going to take our students on as supervisors, and be able to manage those relationships. We've got to manage the relationships with the organisational managers who give permission for our students to go out there. We've got to maintain the relationships with the Otago Polytechnic in terms of their expectations for what's needed from industry and from us as part of, because I'm part of the fieldwork team that organises the placements. And then we've also got to manage the relationships with the students and their expectations about what placements look like and what they want and where they want them and all that sort of thing. So there's just many relationships to maintain.
It's starting to sound like an octopus.
Yeah, pretty much.
And yours is huge. I think have you got about 3 industry bodies that you need to keep in mind?
Easily, at least that.
Steve's typing away.
Oops. I went to sleep on the keyboard. That's what happened.
Oh. Translating employer wants into possibility. Fantastic. Can you expand on that?
Well, I go to talk to employers all the time. That's part of my job, and to a large degree, they're fairly old school, and they forget how much they've learned over the years, and they expect youngsters to be coming out of a short Polytech course to be push button ready to go, and to have all that industry experience and knowledge already implanted in them. So you've got to try and be a little bit more realistic than that and go, okay, well, what we can teach you here is, and I like the medical approach to it, is first do no harm. And I think that's a really important thing to take. Like the potential for doing a lot of expensive time-consuming damage is pretty high. So you've got to know what you don't know.
Absolutely. And I think you make a really good point, and that's something that we need to be aware of as we are these dual professionals. Kind of, need to take a step back and think about what we were like as, first day in our career of choice, and because we've been working in industries for 20-something years, some of us, and then, you're teaching and an advanced way of doing things, but your learners aren't going to be able to, grasp that concept. So we've got to take a step back and think, how did I learn it, and what is it that they actually need to learn first of all, and really think about that scaffolding of their learning.
I was talking to one of the culinary tutors the other day. He's a grumpy old Scotsman, real nice guy. And he said he locks the door at 8 o'clock, first couple of days of the course.
Right.
And if you don't get there at 8 o'clock, you've missed the day, or you've missed your morning.
Wow. And
he's had a bit of friction from the Polytech. They can't do that, And he said, well, he said, are they allowed to be late? And they said, no. You've got to be a bit flexible. And he said, well, when does it start to be late? When are you late? Is it 10 past? Is it half past? Is it 10 o'clock? So I was talking to him about it, and I said, how does that work? And he said, no one's late the second day. And if they're late the second day, they're never, ever late again. And I think for crusty old employers, which is where everybody's going, you're not going out and working for other 17 or 18-year-olds. You're working for older generation like me, and we appreciate people turning up on time. That's a real important job skill that we kind of overlook a little bit sometimes. It made me smile anyway.
Yeah, no. I think that's very relevant. And again, those are those soft skills. To keep your job, you're going to need to turn up on time.
It's a good start anyway.
Yeah.
and Polytech's a good place to start practicing that for the future.
Responsibility.
Yeah.
Emma, you've put thinking in two modes of thinking simultaneously, right, as a teacher and as a clinician. Absolutely, you have to. It is a balancing act the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just thinking that what would you do if you were a clinician, and the realities of that, which may not always match up with what's in the textbooks.
Right.
But being able to convey both information in a balanced way.
Great. Absolutely. And that is actually very true, isn't it? Because there are things that learners will need to know to pass an exam or an assessment, but it will be done differently out in the field. And I used to find that a lot with some of the things that I used to teach. And then, it's how do you balance that? It makes it difficult. We've got, welcome Lameth. I don't know if he's got his...
Hi Trish.
How are you?
I'm good.
That's good. Welcome. We're talking about being a dual professional.
Right,
So
okay.
meaning that we are teachers, and also we are experts in our industry field. So
Right.
it's so we're just having a discussion, and also putting some pointers up in the conversation boxes in the corner about what that actually means for us. What does it mean for us to be a dual professional?
Right. Okay.
Trish, do you mind if I give an example of something? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I had a discussion, it was yesterday evening, with a former colleague who is a trades teacher in Australia, and they've always had a very good rapport in the automotive school with the employers, which really helps with their apprentices, getting their apprentices into the trade. And then recently with a restructure, some of that networking has sort of slipped by the wayside. Teachers have just been too busy. They haven't kept up to date with their networking with employers, and they've actually lost some of their employers through that. So that's had a detrimental effect. So it is really, really just sort of shows how important it is to keep those networks, keep building those and keep those relationships going.
Absolutely, and and that's very true. Thank you for saying that, because that's in a previous polytech that I worked at, we were encouraged to go out into industry. If you're not necessarily working in industry, then to go out and have a coffee and just maintain those industry connections.
Yes, yeah.
It's important. Ian, what did you put? Instilling an awareness of what they still need to learn, practice, growth mindset. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of building on what Steve was saying around knowing what you don't know, and that being quite important for the current level that I suppose the film and television course is at the moment. It seems to be more like making sure that students have the confidence to find the information they need to further their learning journey with kind of video making, and rather than making them feel like they can step straight into industry and fill these roles, which most of them won't be able to, because there's not enough space and not enough time, and that's not necessarily the focus, is all those little technical bits and pieces. And so I suppose it's making sure that they're going to go from our course in a safe kind of a way, to have good experiences rather than ones that kind of knock them down.
Yeah, absolutely. So how is that something that you share right in the very beginning, that it is, I suppose people stay in that field for a long time, that it is quite a hard field to push into?
Yeah, for sure. There's lots of discussion around that. We try to bring in kind of industry people as well to share how they got a start as well, and the things that they did and how long it took and how hard it was and that kind of thing. And I guess just how long it can take to build up a network of I suppose, clients in order to be an independent kind of filmmaker, and also the things that you might need to do on the path towards that if you decide that's what you want to do. And so, yeah, that's kind of a continual conversation that I feel we need to keep coming back to as much as possible as we're spending time with our students.
Yeah, and remind them of the importance. And that's, that's something else I'm sort of thinking, what, and based on what everyone's been saying, what is a teacher who is really closely engaged with industry? What does that look like to you all? How do we do it? What do we need to do to, align closely with industry? Thinking of your context where you're teaching.
I think it's real important not to narrow the parameters too much as well. We certainly get people in and take the kids out on, students, out on field trips where they're meeting a real variety of people who've taken the trade I'm teaching and taken it in interesting directions. So they're not thinking, oh, well, I'm doing automotive trades or whatever, I'm going to end up stuck in a workshop for the rest of my life. There's so many incredible things you can lead to from that And I think that's really important, is to try to keep expanding people's horizons.
Great, yeah, and showing them, how many different areas that they could break into and move into. And so would you take them out and show them different places? Yeah. So Emma maintains a reciprocal relationship, offering professional development workshops in return for clinicians taking on students. Wonderful. So they're kind of scratching each other's back a little bit. Has anybody got anything else they want to share?
No, that's a real good one. We're certainly building on that, trying to get professionals in and giving them the chance to do courses in electric vehicles and different new technology that's coming on that they're panicking about because they didn't learn about it and they haven't worked on it. So we're really trying to get ahead of the pack with that.
Yeah, provide the service before the demand is outweighed.
Exactly, and that makes them, just exactly as Emma's written there, a reciprocal relationship. So then they're keen to help us out with our apprentice program and with our students.
Yeah.
And then they've also got that, industry have a hands-on with what is actually happening in our teaching and learning environments. So they trust you as a teacher and trust the quality of the learner that's coming through. So great. So, we've got partnership that Emma's talked about, and also, Steve is keeping in contact and sharing experiences, sharing, the look of different industry. Is there any other ways that people, that you are undertaking a relationship with industry?
I suppose for me personally, as a teacher, I'm in the privileged position that I'm only part-time, and so that enables me to, and that's the only reason, that's one of the reasons I'm able to do this, is that I can still, because my focus is still very much being a filmmaker and making films for myself and with other people. And so I guess that's how I can kind of stay plugged in, is through actually continuing to kind of strive in that world. And then I guess I'm thinking about ways that, aside from just sharing those experiences with the students, I guess, and bringing along people to kind of share their other experiences, I guess we also get kind of opportunity. People are always looking for free or cheap videos.
Right.
And so that's another interesting one as to how to handle that with, in terms of like, do we give these opportunities to students? And it's something I struggle with as well, because I feel like that process should really be transparent. But in the end, it's a difficult one, because it needs to go to the best students. If it is, and it needs to go to only ones that are really ready for that. And a lot of the time the answer from us is, we don't have anyone who can do that for you at the moment, or, that's too complicated for us to make that into an assignment or something like that. So It's something that we kind of don't have a set process for how to handle that at the moment. And it's something that I think would be nice if we had a particular channel that we could run that into.
And that's actually a really good idea, because to maintain those ties and also to keep your students safe, they do need to be prepared. They can't be thrown in the deep end.
No.
So it'll be interesting to hear what you actually come up with as to a workaround on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the moment it is something where a better student will be shoulder tapped, or the call will go out to the class as to, here's this opportunity, who feels ready and who's interested in doing something like this, and then I suppose there's some kind of hand holding to try to make sure that is a safe experience. But then I suppose during this redevelopment, I guess the team that we've assembled, this is a discussion that we've had, and that it's kind of, I guess, been said that students need to be level 6 or level 7, I think, for the Polytech to agree that it is safe for them to go out and do work.
Yeah.
or like have those kind of professional experiences.
Yeah, and have that knowledge behind them.
Yeah, and so that's above the level of the film and television course. And so in that way, it's still kind of, it's a tricky one, because can you still offer those opportunities in another way, or is it a no, or yeah.
Still a few things to really be sorted out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, interesting. Because I think, the benefit of it is huge, and that's something, what did you say there, Wendy? Going to workplaces also provides good opportunities for a risk assessment prior to students attending. Yeah. I know with our architecture team, there is, one of the teachers is really involved in industry, through his previous career as an architect, and he often gets industry phoning him to say, who are your learners? This is what we're looking for. Who have you got? And that's a huge pat on the back, to be thought of so highly, and for the Polytech also to be thought of so highly, that they're chasing our learners. That's it's educating them as well.
And so do you know much about their process in terms of, is it transparent, or does that particular kind of program leader just decide that that student there gets that opportunity, or?
Yes, and he's sort of not backwards and coming forward. So he is transparent from the fact that he does, say to all the learners, this is what does happen. People will contact me, looking for the learners, and so he tells them that, right from the get off. It's a 3-year degree, so he tells them right from the very start, and year after year. And he's still getting these, he's been teaching here for about 25 years, and these learners that he's put into industry are still keeping in contact. So, it's something that he is incredibly passionate about. It doesn't feel like an extra role for him. He's truly interested in what's going on out there, and getting these, he sees it as part of his role as a teacher to, not find jobs, but encourage that next step once they walk out the door of the Polytech. So it could be, Ian, if you're thinking along those lines, I could introduce you both.
Yeah. I guess that might be useful, I suppose. It sounds like I have quite a clear idea of I think that's the simplest way to do it. I guess I'll just keep kind of that conversation going with the other team that we're working with, and let you know. Yeah, no,
it's great. I think it's sort of just, it's just feeling your way and what you're more comfortable with. I know beauty therapy tutors who go out and have treatments done, so that they're maintaining those industry links. It can be done whatever way is more suitable. Hairdressers do the same thing, whatever is more suitable and applicable to your industry. And true, Emma, I really like what you say, that it's up to us to go to them because they're busy. They don't have the time, and possibly, they're not thinking to maintain, to share the knowledge that they've got. So, it's up to us to go, gosh, there's a wealth of knowledge out there that are working. This is who we want to tap into.
Yeah.
Anything else anybody would like to add? Because we're pretty much running out of time, and it's been great conversation.
Yeah.
And the concept of a dual professional, while we've touched on it today and introduced it so that we can start thinking of it, definitely within the next courses, facilitating and learning. Goodness me, what's it called? Isn't that terrible? Facilitating tertiary learning environments. Apologies. That is something that is Bronwyn looks at very, very closely.
Yeah.
of how we see ourselves and how we maintain our roles as a dual professional. So, shall we
Thanks,
wrap it
Trish.
up there? Thank you so much for your time, and if there's anything that you'd like to further add to this discussion, please put it into in the discussion forums.
No, that's good stuff. Thanks very much. Heaps better than
Cool,
last week.
thank you.
That
Thank you
is
very
Thanks, Trish,
Thank you.
Wendy, and everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
that is a pleasure.
Take care.
Lamath,
Have
are
a
you-
nice evening.
I was just going to
Yes,
grab
Trish.
Lamath. Are you still there? Do you want to hang on just for a second? You and I'll have a quick chat.
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful.
Okay. Night, everyone.
Ka kite.
Right.
Bye now.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.